really defining uniqueness. When you think of uniqueness, it's really to be able to go into something and say that that's never been done before. And the way in which you did it is a wow. So when you actually can, if you've done this, over a long career, which I have, is like you actually see the wow in the eyes of the person that you're trying to protect. Like they feel it, and you're really just trying to then give them the added confidence that the wow that they're feeling will do the job that it needs to do.
I think that is I agree with you completely. I think that's one of the best compliments you can ever give a company is disruptive. And it sounds kind of like tokeny and cliche at this point, but I fully endorse the idea of if you're going to go into a marketplace ever, especially as the new kid, you're going to have to make some noise to get things rolling. And I think that's one of the things that we look at our partnership with GORE-TEX as such a really beautiful alignment is we want to constantly be disruptive, even disruptive to ourselves, right? It's like you could build all this great pathway between you and your next closest competitor, but that shouldn't be your motivating factors to put distance between your competitors. It should just constantly be to how do we disrupt what we just did and continue and keep it rolling again.
Yeah.
And it sounds like GORE-TEX has that same DNA when it comes to what they do categorically, whatever it is.
Welcome to the LiveWire podcast, powered by Family. Join us as we explore the untold stories behind America's electrical infrastructure, sparking conversations about life, safety, business, and innovation. Brought to you by OEL.
All right, Mr. Jim Ellis in the house. What's going on, buddy?
Oh man, I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. You were in town this week for NSC.
I was, yeah. It's nice to be in Denver.
Yeah. How was the show?
Fantastic. Yeah, it's nice to reconnect with end users.
Yeah. I think for all intents and purposes, I obviously wanted to have you on LiveWire because I think it's really cool for us, obviously as a brand, as kind of we've gone through this journey together. But you've been kind of in and around the industry for a little while now.
A little while.
And I want people to kind of know, like, who is Jim Ellis? Where'd he come from?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And then what's his long-term intentionality here a little bit, So, I mean, born in California?
Yeah. So I started out in LA. I met my wife in Catalina. So just off of California, off the coast of California. And our journey started there. We migrated to the east, and now I'm with GORE.
How'd you get into textiles though? Like, what was the whole background
So I
there?
started out with a company where we actually were protecting things. So the planet, soil, and then went from things to people.
Did you go to school in California?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
So I went to school in California, grew up there as a kid, and then it's kind of nice to experience East Coast living as well.
All right, but hang on. I want to hang out in California for a second here because, you're how many? Do you have siblings? Like,
I do, yeah.
Where in California
so
did you
I'm
grow
number
up?
5, of 7.
What?
So, yeah. So we're 7. So there's 7 kids. And I'm number 5.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a nice position to be in because you've got the elders, that are sort of you're aspiring to catch up to them, and then you've got a few that you got to take care of under you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was like us. We had my parents had 2 batches of kids. Yeah. They had Josh and Jessica first. I think they thought they were done, and they said, "Oh, we'll have a couple more." And then they had Sterling and myself, and I think they thought they were done, and then they accidentally had Forrest. So we always remind Forrest that he wasn't necessarily planned nor wanted, but he is here, and we do love him.
Yeah.
So
that's fantastic.
Okay, so California, you grew up and stuff. You got 7.
Yeah. So I'm 6 brothers and sisters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
1 of 7.
Are any of them in and around this type of industry or
no, they're not. Ironically, we kind of all scattered into different directions, which is not, I don't think, that unusual. But yeah, just with being in a sales career, I'm able to reconnect with them often, which is nice.
Are most of them in California still?
They are.
Cool.
So a few there and a few on the East Coast as well.
What part of California?
So Southern California. So we
San Diego, LA.
This is all LA. So we're just outside of LA in a town called Pasadena.
I've heard of it.
So the home of the Rose Parade, and so so it's kind of it's always nostalgic to kind of go back there and then see high school friends and reconnect with family.
Did you go to school in
I
California?
did. Yeah.
Where'd you go to school?
I did.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to school just outside of California in northern Arizona.
Okay. Flagstaff?
Yeah, Flagstaff. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is that?
Lumberjacks.
The Lumberjacks. That's what they are. Flagstaff
Yeah,
is beautiful.
yeah,
People think that
yeah.
Arizona doesn't have
Not
this,
a tremendous football team,
No. Northern Arizona.
We struggled back then, but at the time, it's nice to, I would say, shift from city living to nature.
I went to UNC, not the Tar Heels,
Yeah.
Northern Colorado,
Okay.
aka Stinkyville,
Yeah.
Greeley, and Northern Arizona it's like the RMAC or something like that football program or something like that. So
no one knows about it.
No, nobody knows about it. No. But Northern Arizona was always on there, and I was like, and I had a bunch of friends that came from Colorado. I think Colorado, a lot of people, when they want to go out of state, they go to Northern Arizona a lot and stuff. But Flagstaff is gorgeous. It's an awesome
when
place.
you leave Phoenix and then you go up to Flagstaff, you go,
Different
oh my
worlds.
gosh, it's a different world. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to school. Did you go to school for like textiles, or like how do you go to school for this at all, or do you just kind of?
Yeah, I would tell you is that for whatever I did in school had nothing to do with what I did in my career, which was kind of interesting. But I do think that whatever you do, to sort of create your baseline, it's like the foundation, right? So family's foundation, your early work, is your foundation. And then you start to carry that into, your next dimension. And yeah, I think I got into these types of materials, like engineering of materials, but also connecting with, how are they going to be used? And so who knew that was going to become a career and 3 decades later?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you meet your wife in Arizona, California?
California.
You said California.
Yeah,
Okay.
so California, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So 3 decades, so today's my wedding anniversary. So,
What?
Yeah. So 30th.
And you're with me?
30th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
And then also, 3 decades in the field.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So 30 years of marriage.
Yeah. So this is it.
And
yeah.
have you been in sales the whole entire 30 years that you've been married?
Yeah. So I would call it more market development work. So started, my earliest part of my career, in just field sales, but then quickly went up through, product management and then, deeper understanding of the markets. And so that's largely what I do today.
Okay. And were you in, what was the first kind of sales job that you had?
So back in the day, it was really, as I mentioned, we were selling membranes to protect, soil, if you will, and from hazardous materials. And so a lot of it was just, going out and going to remote sites, meeting people at remote job sites and better understanding the environmental conditions, were our materials going to work in that particular environment.
So when you say remote sites, what are you talking about? Are you talking about literally 100 or an hour past Tucson type of a thing? Like those types of sites?
So my most remote site, which is a kind of a cool story, I went up to where they drill for oil in Alaska called Prudhoe Bay.
Okay.
And, I'm a young 20-some-year-old kid out of college, and they said, show up at the airport. It's going to be a small plane. We head up on a narco plane, and we come over the horizon, and all you see is a gravel runway. And so that's remote.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's always like I think there's a glamour that people think to sales.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, I don't think you've seen the hotels I've stayed in before.
No,
or the places
not
I've had
at
to go.
all.
Now that sounds pretty though. Alaska sounds pretty. I'm talking more like some areas that I'm like,
but you're right. Some people think of this as, I'll be at, this exotic hotel with a waterfall. And when I think of it, it was a brown building, metal building, on the edge of earth. But what was cool about those experiences is that you solved the technical problem, but during the same visit, the customer said, hey, do you have time? Let's go and see some polar bears. Now, how often can you do that?
That's insane.
Right?
That's insane. That's the stuff that I think that people don't understand. And that's what I do love about sales. I love the exposure point that you get to so many different industries. And depending on what you're doing, obviously it sounds like your whole background is a lot of high technical textile types of sales, right? Like you're solving real issues, especially environmental ones. I think that even in our world with the electrical safety stuff, I think a lot of people have this idea that, oh, it's the electrical contractor that comes to my house and fixes this or
Sure.
whatever else, or even the commercial ones. And I'm like, no. Electricity's everywhere. It is in
Exactly.
everything. Power generation, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
Yeah.
everything that you can possibly think of that has a switch connected to it. We're pretty much in there. So, I mean, whether it's the Pacific Northwest, the logging industry, to the cardboard boxes that get made for Amazon, like it's just
Sure.
beyond broad. Okay, so you do that for first job is like what? How long did you do that for?
I was a few years in that before, same company. Then I went back to do product management. And so I think that was good because the company that I was working for at the time, had a holistic view. They really wanted to empower you so that you knew from, knitting and weaving a fabric to putting the coating on the fabrics, where did the coatings come from, but have all of that knowledge. And then that way, when you go into the field, you're almost like solving the problem in your head. So when you came back to work with engineers on making whatever the final product might be, you were already envisioned what that solution would be.
Yeah, and that's such a tough. There's a high comprehension level that you have to have for that because you're going into a marketplace with sort of a set of opportunities and like recipes that you can work out of.
Yeah.
You're not coming in selling just an individual solo widget piece that's
Exactly.
Here it is and
Yeah.
it doesn't move or it's not it doesn't have any sort of like unique properties or anything like that to it. It's just this is what it is.
Yeah.
Whereas you're going in with a much more open mind saying, I got to understand exactly what the issue is, and then I've got to create with an engineering team a series of solutions that are potential opportunities.
That's right.
But that's just
right.
cool.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's good technical
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been at GORE-TEX. I'm gonna just gloss over probably 15, 20 years here. You end up at GORE-TEX. How long ago was it?
Now it's a decade with.
Okay, so you're 10 years in.
Yeah.
And how long have I'm gonna just shoot this right down the pipe here now. Are you you've been with GORE-TEX for 10 years. When did you decide, or when did Gore as a brand decide that, hey, this market that OEL's in and some of our competitors is a market worth pursuing? How do you guys kind of make that determination? How do you
Okay.
go through that market evaluation process to say we can provide substantial value to that marketplace?
Yeah. So at the time, I was working in Gore's like new innovation and new material development area. And an engineer that I connected with out of Germany said that they had been working on, the next level of arc flash protection, but they didn't know a lot about the market. Like they were starting to enable a material, but they didn't know a lot about the market. And they knew that, I spend most of my time in the market. And so that's really how I got connected with, high voltage as, sort of a topic was really, the desire of an engineer, wanting to know more about, those that we're going to protect.
So I got to think that the closest adjacent thing inside of the Gore portfolio is it structural fire?
No, the closest thing that we have for high voltage, would be our electric linesmen.
Okay.
Where we're already protecting them from arc flash
Okay.
in the job that they do.
Okay.
So yeah, that was kind of a nice, segue from that, where, we might have a different objective, making a waterproof membrane now to protect against even higher voltage.
So how do they determine team leads when they're like,
Yeah.
hey, like, because I'm guessing if I'm let's just say I'm top brass over at GORE-TEX,
Sure.
right? And Jim comes to me and says, I got an idea, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you qualify that to an organization as big as GORE-TEX with a global reputation that they have?
Yeah. So I think there's, sort of a brick building process, that you're going through, because you're first, identifying, what problem exists in the market, what might we be able to affect, with, our science and, our technologies. So you kind of start there, and you just, it's really then going from that point to market investigation, where you're saying, I don't necessarily know in a lab, what the problem might be to solve. It's much better to get into the market and then ask users, what are the problems that you experience?
Well, that's where that's why I think having that framework at the beginning of your story is
Yeah.
really important, because if that's what you've been conditioned to do from a sales perspective, which is
Correct.
always how you should do it, especially in a highly technical field, like safety or environmental, whatever that is,
Yeah.
you always ask the question first. You
Yeah.
don't assume you know what the answer
That's
is.
right.
And let
Absolutely.
them tell you what the issue
Sure.
is. So it sounds like GORE-TEX sort of takes that same approach.
Absolutely.
Let's walk into the industry. Let's observe what's going on. Let's find out what the biggest hurdles are, and then make sure that our engineering purposes are well aligned with what
Correct.
we're trying to solve for.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know why you wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get even more granular and specific here. So let's go into the this industrial electrical world. So you guys have, how long does it take to develop a product like the PIRAD technology?
Years.
Yeah.
So definitely, there's a lot of foundational pieces that occur that the outside market, never sees. To really take core, innovative, polymer science and put that together, in a functional package, in a commercial way. So it takes quite a while to develop these things. And then now we're talking about you have a platform, but you're trying to enable it in specific directions.
Yeah. How many times do you think that you guys are able to solve the issue,
Yeah.
create the technology,
Yeah.
and then the production just doesn't meet? Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden that
Yeah.
delta never gets met in between.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, dude, it was right there. Like how many? There's got to be so many projects in Gore's closet.
It's kind of an interesting area because we call it our boneyard. That there's just so many things that people wouldn't realize that in different directions that Gore tries. And I think that we almost like have this internal mantra that we celebrate failure. So that's so strange to say, but it's every step that you took, every lesson, that you went through along the way. It's part of that broader journey, and you are collectively learning as an organization. So even though there's many things that society doesn't see that we tried and we failed at, you're actually learning something from each of those experiences. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I would think that someone like GORE-TEX, I would think that you guys have an incredible graveyard catalog of things that were there, or they were there and they didn't get into production stuff, or they pivoted last minute or whatever else. No, I think that's awesome. And I think building a culture that's okay with failure, or knowing that failure is probable, and still doing it anyway, is a highly motivating place. And there's a creative component to that says it's liberating now. Like, let it rip.
Correct.
Let's see how close we get to it. And if we miss, we'll recalibrate and go at it again and stuff. So I think enabling that culture is everything. And I think that's something that I think the marketplace appreciates and expects that out of good organizations too. Like you're going to swing and miss, but when you hit it, it's going to be lights out.
Exactly. And it's kind of fun to think of it in this career perspective that we're talking about, because I remember when my kids were younger, they would say, well, Dad, what are you going to do today? And I said, I'm going to go off and I'm going to fail today. And then you'd have to explain it further because you don't want them to fail in life, but you'd say that that's how I'm learning, so it's kind of it's fun. It makes each day, it's almost like you're reinventing what you're about to do. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you, but if you can subscribe, and reshare this podcast to someone you know, it really mean a lot to us. All right, let's get back to the episode. So how does Gore now, and we'll use the PIRAD stuff as our prototype for this piece of it. How does Gore now go into a marketplace, and they've done the market analysis, they've created what they believe is a solution for the marketplace. Now you go to sort of phase 3 of that to say, well, there's production, but now we've got to create demand for production. So how do we start selecting our partners to say who's here? This is what we're going to start with at the least.
Well, I think it's interesting before I go to that to sort of share with you a little bit about, sometimes we'll end up we have an A and a B, and we have two great things, and then we have to decide, from an A and a B.
That sucks. It's like two kids. You're like, I like them both, man. I've worked on them for years. This sucks.
Exactly.
I got to pick.
So often, it's, when you have an A and a B, then that's what really is going to start to connect you with partners, right? And partners are at all levels, so partners are those who might bring, the final garment, to the market, their sub-partners. So those might be the distributor who has tentacles, or agents who have tentacles, on down into like the end user. But what we really love to do at that stage is we really want to get to the end user. Like we really want to take A and B to the end user and then really gather the input from the end user. What is it that you see in A and B that, without bias? So the key of doing that work is really that we're not influencing either way. It might be that one's more complex to make than the other one, but we really want to unlock, what are the deeper needs in the market if they were giving something to almost like put what the solution you're thinking of in the embodiment and then letting them give you the feedback.
Is it just devastating when that feedback doesn't go the way that you anticipated it?
It's crushing because you're heading to the boneyard.
Like,
So
like you're like looking at the 1 yard line. You're like, I was right there with this thing.
Yeah, and I have a lot of 99 percenters, in my career that they were like rockets that you thought could get airborne and they just didn't make it. And I think that's where you kind of build who you're really going to be in the market by going through something and realizing in the end, it probably isn't right. Right. And so it did take you all of those steps to figure that out, or to hear that harsh comment in the end is that, I wouldn't be comfortable with this as a solution.
Yeah. This doesn't provide enough of a differentiating value proposition to us to say we would migrate or move to this and be like, wow, that is just unbelievably brutal.
Bummer.
Like we need a second opinion now.
And you really
need a third opinion and a fourth opinion.
And then you really need to almost like fast forward that to, all right, you've dropped that and now you've got to begin again, right? So you have to have the spirit, to do the work, is that it's actually, that's what I said. It's okay. Like it's almost like you celebrate that we got there because you wouldn't want to take your partners, through other steps beyond that point if you fundamentally knew it's not really the best direction to go.
Yeah, you've got to be the true salesman at that point where you're like, hey, that door closed, so I'm one door closer. I'm one door closer to the success now.
That's right, absolutely.
Okay, so let's just assume then that everything goes well. They say this is awesome.
Yeah.
End user says this is perfect. We love it. This is gonna game change everything and stuff. Now, do we got to go up to the suits now and sell this thing officially with all of our case study work?
Yeah, generally there is a internal process where you're going through and really making sure that everyone's in sync, because there's so much help that you get internally in order to commercialize, we call it, a product or an idea. And so you work your way through that, but also as you're going through that process, that you've also identified, what you think could be, our future partners, especially if it's in this instance here, high voltage protection, it's going to be new partners, right? It might be a dimension that, we weren't there before, and now we've got to kind of go out in the world and select, who's going to help us in that journey.
Yeah. So now you've got to start doing the real market analysis, which is building relationships and finding out who knows who and who's nice to who. And is every industry like that? I mean, I know it from my space, but and everybody's pretty cordial. Like we're all pretty good friends, which is nice. Yeah. We're vicious enemies in a competitive bid situation. But generally speaking, like there was a party last night and it's like, we hug, we spend time together, we know each other's personal lives, our families and stuff. It's like any industry, it's small, or it's grand in its vantage point to the general population, but behind closed doors, it's a tiny group of people that are like, we all know each other and we know exactly what's going on. So how do you walk into that room? I mean, obviously there's some clout that comes with it, right? You got the GORE name. So it's like people are going to take you seriously immediately, but then how do you start building those relationships to determine that?
Yeah, I think definitely what you're working on first is identifying and starting to peel back. Everyone can have, sort of a facade, this is what they're projecting, but the true essence is what's behind the curtain. And you have to then find a way in which you can build early trust, where you can then peel back the curtain. And it works both ways, so in building a partnership, it's about looking inside of that company, and then also for them to understand more about, who we are, who we've done business with, why, and, sort of just now using each one of those engagements to figure out, is this going to be good? Could this be possible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then making that decision is always probably a little bit nerve-wracking because you're like, okay, here's my horses to start this journey.
Sure.
And I only know this from my experience, is that you're going to go, these are my horses. We're going to start here. We're going to see, and then we're going to evaluate, and we're going to continue to decide. And they'll help us build the market, right? So
Absolutely.
And that's true of, and again, I'm talking about Pyred exclusively in this conversation, but I'm making an assumption that if it is something in the outdoor world or something like that, you guys sort of have your same series of catalog players that you really want to start with, and then you want to give opportunity to grow with as well. Yeah,
because I think that you want to be able to enable your technologies to get to the market through, different connection points, if you will. And the brands are really the connectors, to the market. And the brands are creating subgroups, within the market that were built around their collection. Our trade, it could be around insulated tools, and then that forms into protective PPE. And so when you look at that, as though that transaction was probably going on for many, many years, that sub-trust was being built, around that collection. And so we're now trying to, drive into that and really kind of attach to that. But we want to make sure that as we're kind of going through that vetting process, that, hey, this, makes sense for both of us. Like the way in which, that company is positioning their products, makes sense for our technologies.
Okay, so what are the so that sounds like those are qualifiers, right? That's
they
kind of like
be.
1, 2, 3, 4 sort of bullet points that you're like, I'm kind of looking to hit all these boxes when I'm evaluating it, determining who we need to go to market with. What would be a red flag for you in that regard?
Yeah, I think that definitely for me in that early, assessment period is figuring out, are we talking to a company that you can kind of see the structure of the company is more built around numbers and just making money? If it's really just about making money, and in this instance here, I'm thinking about it more in protecting humans. And they're more about money and not necessarily protecting humans.
Units and volume sold. Yeah.
Then you start to see that, hey, we're really not vested in the same collective way. So you kind of start with that, and then what you want to start to do is then peel back. Is that what does that company aspire to do? For its audience or for who it serves. So if you really look at it that way, is that it's not product you're bringing, you're really servicing those in the community that that you're targeting, and together we're looking at how do we make it better, right? So we might have a material that can enable that, but we can't get there alone. We've got to get there with garment design, how that product's going to be manufactured. So there's many other components of getting our product enabled into the form that the market needs it.
It seems like a really high intentionality around integrity for the GORE-TEX brand, right?
Yeah.
It's like we may not necessarily pick the biggest, behemoth in the room.
That's right.
If we're not properly aligned with them. We may go with more boutiques because we think that strategically they're going to do the storytelling that we really want to tell for this particular product. Is that correct?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I mean, you're really sometimes just diagnosing, how does a market find what it needs, right? And for us, we're trying to enable that. So it wouldn't matter to us, size. We have some large customers and we have some very, very small customers. And I think that a large customer still can have a specialized group.
Absolutely.
That can then really tell the story, through, their product design, how they're enabling the solution in the market, and so we want to make sure, though, it's that important. Right. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that with all of our partners, is that the importance level is high enough. And it's much different than that company that, just really is looking transactionally.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. I think something I had in this conversation is like figuring out a little bit, when does GORE decide that, hey, we need to take a little bit more of a direct lead for these guys to help them or something, versus we're going to kind of just play in the background and stuff? Like, is there ever a conversation like that where you say, we love what these guys are doing, we think we need a little bit of help, we can go and like put the bit in their mouth and help guide them to where they should go, versus somebody putting you in the background and then kind of just recessing you guys to the point where you're just like, this doesn't make sense for us from a marketing standpoint and all the value that we think we bring to the marketplace?
Yeah. Well, we have have in our portfolio very strong brands. We have some that are very how should I say, progressive. Using new modern ways in which you're able to reach the end user and communicate. But I think that when you look at who should lead, it's more about what is it that you're trying to project. In some instances, our innovations can be very disruptive. And when they're disruptive, then, sometimes, you want to lean on the inventor. You want to come back to how is the technology built, because that's going to help the collaboration build the trust that you're going to need. So there are times, where, GORE or myself can be projected forward, where we're trying to lead the conversation because the technology is just very disruptive. When we first, went into this market, and we said, wow, we're going to make this, thin material protect people from 35,000 degrees, right, in an instant flash. And it's going to have integrity and hold together, right, after all of that blast. People, it's sometimes, almost like, I don't believe you, right? And so it's disruptive. And so we have to be able to have a way in which we unlock the science. How did GORE create the science to do that? And how is that fundamentally different than the traditional way that we were doing it?
Would you say categorically you guys think of yourselves as disruptors?
Oh, yeah. So, I think that's probably one of the best compliments, in a particular direction that you're trying to solve, or, when you're really defining uniqueness. When you think of uniqueness, it's really to be able to go into something and say that that's never been done before. And the way in which you did it is a wow. So when you actually can, if you've done this, over a long career, which I have, is like you actually see the wow in the eyes of the person that you're trying to protect. Like they feel it, and you're really just trying to then give them the added confidence that the wow that they're feeling will do the job that it needs to do.
I think that is I agree with you completely. I think that's one of the best compliments you can ever give a company is disruptive. And it sounds kind of like tokeny and cliche at this point, but I fully endorse the idea of if you're going to go into a marketplace ever, especially as the new kid, you're going to have to make some noise to get things rolling. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we look at our partnership with GORE-TEX as such a really beautiful alignment is we want to constantly be disruptive, even disruptive to ourselves, right? It's like you could build all this great pathway between you and your next closest competitor, but that shouldn't be your motivating factors to put distance between your competitors. It should just constantly be to how do we disrupt what we just did and continue and keep it rolling again. Yeah. And it sounds like GORE-TEX has that same DNA when it comes to what they do categorically, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's always, almost like always innovating. Innovation just doesn't stop. Right. It's a continuum. And when you think of it that way, then it's constantly scanning. When we look at even the product that we make today, we might find a way to make it safer. Right. And when we do that, then we're communicating with our partners and we're saying, hey, this might add costs. It might require more complexity, in order to pull it off in the way in which you manufacture the product. But the outcome is it's still safer. A standard didn't have to tell us to do that. Right. Right. It's really caring about who it is that you're going to protect. And it's worthwhile.
Yeah, the amount of testing and even just intellectual R&D that it seems like you guys go through to, like for us, right? It's like, well, here's this particular set of documentation that is required for us to be able to issue this out into the marketplace. And then I think what people don't realize is there's the level of integrity behind that is then now GORE needs to do an evaluation process on it. GORE needs to do all these different pieces to verify that it meets not just the industry standard, but now what GORE's standards are. And I think that's what's really cool. And it enables, I think, your partners to come along on that ride with you. Now all of a sudden their minds are thinking, oh, the benchmark or the baseline, it really isn't good enough for where we're going collectively as a team now, and as partners in all of this. So how oftentimes do you get brands or companies that you guys partner with on technology that really understand that vision and go along for that ride and get excited about it and stay motivated with you versus ones that don't? Like, is it annoying? I would think some are annoyed by that. They're like, "Come on, I'm just trying to let me get the logo on the brand. Let me get the logo on the garment, and I got to sell some units."
Yeah, so I have kind of a funny logo story, because in my career, we were looking at race driver, garments, right? And we said, hey, that's a great dimension for us. And we got to the lab.
Like NASCAR.
Yeah, like NASCAR. And we got to the lab, to investigate, how do you test these products, right? And they said, oh, we take a garment, that, is a plain Jane garment, has nothing on it. We put that through, a tremendous fire test. And if it passes that, that's how you could become certified. So we wanted to take it a step further. And we asked them the question. We said, well, I've never really seen a plain Jane NASCAR driver. The NASCAR driver has, all kinds of branding, all kinds of labels on that garment. Do you retest the garment with how they actually use it? Oh, no. We always test a plain Jane garment.
Before logos, before anything that could melt in a fire.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when we heard that, we thought, this is probably not the kind of standard that we would want to be linked to. Like, we would actually want to get to the standards body, and influence that. But fast forward, when I came into this industry, and then we're talking about humans, we had someone, I want that big, bold brand on my garment, because it tells the market, hey, this is all about me, this garment. And we would often say, to, that particular partner is that, okay, the standard might say that, label of X size is acceptable to use, even, though it's fire retardant, right? So, your garment can be protecting, but the label itself might be on fire. GORE standard is, we don't want that as an outcome, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we would rather do something different in order to call out, the brand on the garment, but always pick what is, the best fitness for use for the end application. And I think that's that collaboration that you're looking for, is that, that we both care about that as an outcome.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How much, how much, I gotta think it's super important, but how much time do you have to spend in the post product launch relationship building, right? Are there people that are there ever companies that you just get super excited about and they just kind of fall off real quick and you're like, dang it, dude, that one, I thought that one had some serious potential. How do you recover from that, from the sales and a development side? Because I don't consider you a salesman. You're truly a developer, a market developer is what I feel like.
Yeah, I would say to you is that, so again, it's not just our journey, it's the journey that we're taking together. Mm. And in the same way that I described earlier about, product, you're trialing product to figure out, hey, is this innovative enough? Is this disruptive enough, right? And there's many that don't make it. That can also happen with the partnerships, right? It can just be that I thought one thing in going to the market, that this would be effective, and it's clearly not being effective, right? And it's like any relationship, it doesn't make sense to keep going, if that is not working, right? For either party. And I think you have to have, the discipline and the sort of the trust in yourself, is that, sometimes, it's just like what you would have done on the product side, but the market's just not responding to it. And, it's better to stop early than it would be to continue and, make it difficult.
All right, give me a general grade scale. How do you like the partnership with OEL?
I love it.
Really?
I love it. Yeah. So I would say to you is that what was interesting about your conversation about your family, I met Forrest first. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I liked the scrappiness of your sort of your family structure, where you came from as a company. And then I loved how, you brought product to market, where it really, for me, you feel everything about your company through the final solution. And if for me, as I was peeling back the company and getting to know more about the company, OEL is about, we care about our employees, we care about our distributors, we care about the factory workers, mm-hmm. And so when you think about all those layers, and then with actually, those touch points in the market, you actually feel part of that. I feel I feel a part of the OEL family, when I'm in the process with you.
No, and I think that's I think a little bit of point of this whole thing is both industry, but it's also just kind of like getting you familiarized with more of who we are as a DNA. And I think that's what's kind of fun about this. And I agree with you completely. But you're a willing partner also, which is nice too. I think everybody that in the industry, when I talk about it, it's awesome. Everybody's super sweet. Everybody's very nice. Everybody has, I think, truly good intentions. And I don't think that there's a lot of industries in this world that you can say that about across the board. But it's rare that I find anyone in the particular space that we're in, which is electrical safety, to really be ill-intentioned. Everybody really does have, I think, the right motives that they are trying to protect the end user. Nobody wants to see that. Are we all, like I said, competitors? Absolutely. But I think that we're truly in it for the right reasons. And I think that's what's exciting. And it's been really exciting for us to have partners come alongside with us and help us tell the story. And we have such a huge vested interest in trade success in the United States. We want to see people have great jobs. We see people have great long careers. Even if they're not with us, we're going to help them build the building block or have the building blocks to launch them into whatever career they want to go into. And I think the biggest thing for us is your family, right? It's like the whole thing is family to us. We are the mom and pop shop. As we grow, how do you maintain that piece of it? Luckily, I've got, I think, two really good brothers that always keep, especially me, humble through that process and not ever overwhelmed that, yes, we are saving lives, but we're also having a great time doing that. And we want to have everybody have that same sort of just motivation with us. And I don't know, it's just fun. I think you fit in really nicely though with us. It was kind of like once we broke bread a little bit, kind of figured each other out a little bit, all of a sudden it was like, oh, he's a fun guy. They're all fun guys. They're not stiff. And I think that's always, for us, I had a huge imposter syndrome in the space for a long time because I'm not an electrician, right? I wasn't a lineman. I didn't climb poles for 20 years and this is what I do now. I dropped out of college after a semester. So there was this imposter syndrome like that everybody could see that I have to learn all this stuff on the fly. And now to have kind of be on the other side of that going, no, this is what we do and this is why we do it. And these are the partners that we have that have we've selected that and that have also selected us too. There's a lot of assuring factors of that. And so we take a lot of pride and humility with the GORE-TEX name, with what PyRad is as a technology solution, and the fact that we're able to sort of couple all that together with other great partners to build this product that goes into the marketplace that truly enables higher safety performance out of workers that are building America's economy. It's a beautiful circle of all of it coming together in a moment. So I can't thank you guys enough just for taking the risk on us, because I do think it's always a risk for you guys you got to put your name and your integrity on the line to say, I think these guys may do this and I think they can do it well, to say that. And for us, it's like we've been embraced as a piece of this GORE family now too, which is just so cool.
Yeah, I think it definitely, OEL for me reflects part of the broader trust. Is that we really want that integrity at the end of the day, for that connection point with our protective garment in this instance, or the service that you provide, is that there's the same level of trust, that's in the GORE family is also in the OEL family. So sometimes I look at it as though like I'm a facilitator. I'm trying to create that, but we always start out with a blank canvas, right? It's really the portrait, that we ultimately end up with is what we collectively did together.
Mm-hmm. What's the history of GORE is interesting though.
Yeah.
I think everybody, and I'm guilty of this too, everybody sort of thinks of GORE as this powerhouse German brand, but that's not the story.
No. So it was interesting to have, a scientist, that, originated, he worked for DuPont. And I think that, for me coming in from the outside world and then seeing, how you talked about humble, and when you see the Gore House, when you come to our innovation center and you spend time with us, you see that humbleness, of where, our grassroots were. The company started, very much like many great innovators, in the basement, of a home, kids going off to college, where you got a balanced life and this new company. But to see it to emerge, into what it is today, it's more than 14,000 employees, 5,000 patents. When you think of those things, sending product to the most, harsh environments, sending products to space and enabling society to advance itself. When you see all of those different dimensions, for me, I'm like a kid every day.
For sure. Yeah. It's probably just exciting to see. You're like, oh, wow, we're in that too. Oh, that's neat.
That's right.
What's the coolest industry that you've ever been a part of as far as like the Gore portfolio is concerned? Like, is there any particular category? Is it aerospace? I love electrical, but
no, I would say to you is that what I do today is probably the best chapter.
Really?
When I came to Gore, I started with sort of, now these are new inventions, new innovations, right? But they're pretty far up, in the funnel, and they're still being, envisioned and tweaked. And that can be maddening, if you really want to get out into the markets. And, sometimes it's, very selective interviews early in the process, right? And for me, getting out into the markets themselves, with now fully commercialized solutions, for me, that was just a bit more fun attached to it, because now we've got this embodiment, but we might be in a brand new space and we need to find partners like OEL that can help us project that story, help us build our brand, and ultimately build the next layer of trust.
What's the average life cycle? Or you said upper part of the funnel.
Yeah.
What's the largest or longest life cycle you've seen on to get a product to market that it was way up in the funnel. It took us 20 years to get this thing to NASA finally or something like that.
Sure.
What's the average timeline on a pipeline or a funnel, I guess?
I'm not sure completely because there's probably so many different building blocks, that had to be put together in order to pull something off. But I have, witnessed, technologies where it's often I would hear the comment, we've been working on this for 10 years.
Sure.
And some many longer, and so when you think about that, you have to have that has to be part of who you are. Like you have to start that whole process with there's going to be some that are on a long journey and that, we won't know for maybe more than that, could be several decades, is that what's the effectiveness of that? So there can be test products that are out there that, only time will tell. And I think that that's kind of an amazing statement, for a company that, you're going to take, those risks, you call them. You're going to take those risks, those bets. Some will pay off, some won't, but still in their collectiveness, that's going to be something that's worth investing in.
That's that culture piece.
That's a culture.
Right. That's that. We're okay with failure here.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
right.
Cool. So then, how many times do you have to go back and almost keep the engineers motivated to be like, I promise, we just got to get a little further with this guy.
Yeah,
Get me a prototype, please.
Yeah. We're all humans, and so.
Oh yeah, I would get annoyed with you all the time. I'd be like, dude, no, Jim, it's not happening.
That's right. So we're all humans, and
I promised the customer in 2 weeks I'd have a prototype.
Yeah. So some are rigged where I'm rigged where I have zero patience. So I want it now, and we have others, that are very good about sort of laying you out a process that they're going through, right? And I would also say there's admiration, in between that. There's admiration that I've learned to really understand that, that thoroughness, to go through and unlock. And then when something doesn't work, to then pivot and go a new direction. Learning that, has helped me. It's almost like it's helped me gain more patience, because, as you're monitoring, as you're trying to move fast, you're also recognizing that something that great probably wasn't instantaneous anyhow.
No way. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you almost have to, it's a little bit of parenting. right?
That's right.
Like
That's
you
right.
see the end, I need to get you to where you need to be by the time you're 16, 17,
That's
18.
right.
All right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're 2 right now. So
Yeah,
we're
that's
gonna
right.
slowly stair step this thing. What's like a project that you're most proud of?
Oh, so gosh, it's hard to really pick, from the variety of things that I've done. Um, I would say to you is that there's just, anytime that it went, for me, when it went from sort of, things that we were trying to protect, planet, and soil and things like that, when I got to humans, it was really looking at sort of the most, extreme job. And it may not have been a job where we were going to make the most money. But it was a job where it was a miserable job. And it was a job where once I did, that market profile and I actually lived through what I call, jobs to be done, so it's really understanding the DNA of the worker, and what they experienced in that day. We did a project where we had workers that worked in front of a furnace and might get occasionally hit, with molten bad things. So it was never going to be giant, but it was really almost like explaining it back inside of Gore. We can do this. Like we can make the day in the life of that worker so much better. Why should we not do this, right? So I think that's really when you're able to commercialize that. You really took it from, we're not just all about making money. We actually did what we say we're going to do. And I like that. I like being part of that.
It's the biggest impact, really, is what you're looking at. You're not necessarily considering like, oh, look at the market cap of that particular industry. You're like, this has the greatest. It may be the smallest worker force in the space, but it has the greatest to gain from us stepping into the particular marketplace and providing what our expertise are, which is solutions and technology.
It could be in testing. Sometimes the work that we've done in testing is a novel way of testing something, right? We've tested products that are not our products. They're our customers' combined product. And when we do that sometimes, people will ask us, why did you do that? That's not your product. And I said, but they're going to use that in a combined way. And we want to make sure that the system works. So we care about the system, and we care about also communicating that to companies so that we would help them better understand, how do you evaluate your PPE? Even if you don't buy from us, if we don't achieve that outcome, still we left something with you that we feel as though it's a legacy.
I love that. I think that's something that for OEL, we adopted that same principle, which is be a resource, be a solutions provider. Even if OEL is not the final brand or product that you end up going with, we hope that we've enabled you to make the best possible decision that you can, even if it's with a competitor of ours. And we're okay with that because there's here's our list of competitors that we would recommend, and we will make that recommendation to them. And I'm happy about that too, because it shows good faith. And I think good faith is incredibly important, especially when you're talking about safety of any kind. Because that is your reputation. That's your integrity.
I would say to you is also OEL to me is the type of company where I was thinking about that as I came in today to talk to you. And I was thinking about what is that moment where you're trying to innovate and you're not ready and the next guy is ready. I think OEL is the type of company where they would say, Mr. Customer, end user, we know what your needs are. And my competitor actually has this and I don't have it. Like I think OEL is the type of company where they would want that end user to have that solution now, even if they're not ready. And I think that's a different level of integrity.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's again, what's the mission? The mission is to preserve and protect lives. It doesn't say OEL is the only people that can provide that solution. It is just a general statement of this is what we're trying to do. And if it isn't with us and we don't provide a solution for you, damn it, let's get you to a place that has that solution because your life is too important to your family, to people around you that love you. It's not worth it to us. And I think that's good. That's the right fundamentals to have, regardless of whatever it is that you're doing. I appreciate you seeing things that way because that is how we try to project it. We're vicious competitors. Like I am wickedly competitive.
Sure.
I can stay up at night grinding my teeth over losing an opportunity or something like that. But at the same time, value my competitors so much, to the point where I just think the world of them, because they make me better, they make us better, they make everyone better. And likewise, we hope that we do the same thing. And, a lot of us have access to the same partners, the Gores and stuff like that of the world. Now it's just, so then it just turns into a foot race, right? And that's what I think is so fun about it. And at the end of the day, the end user wins. And that's what's the best part.
Yeah, but don't forget, I bring you back to that comment I made about your blank canvas, right? Is that, your GORE-TEX canvas, is now the portrait that you're building. And it's through these types of things, these examples that I'm sharing, where I see it coming together, where you guys are, rock stars. It's really, you're trying to do things at the next level, for the industry.
Yep.
Adding layers of innovation. Figuring out that in society, we now have to shift. We have to bring women into the workforce, right? So women are going to start to engage in these dangerous jobs. They don't want to wear men's clothing. So when I look at an innovative
They shouldn't wear
design,
men's clothing.
By OEL, that is now fitted properly for our, future, female workers. I mean, to me, that's really the next step in innovation, that it's the same material. It's our material enabled in a new form that better fits market needs.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. We appreciate you guys seeing it that way. And I think it's fun. It's fun to see the response. It's fun to see people get excited about PP, because for a long time, I got to think, since the dawn of electrical safety PP, nobody's been ever excited about it. So now to be able to feel like we're positioned in a way with partnerships like Gore, and their PIRAD stuff, to say, we're not going to just give you something nice or something cool. We're going to actually just break the entire mold of the entire industry, with how we explain it, how we visualize it, and how we deliver it. And I think that's just the coolest thing in the world. And I never would have expected that, one, I would be in this industry. I've got family legacy obviously in it, but I never factored it for myself. And I probably tried to avoid it, frankly, at all costs. And now to be here and be vested into it and understand it, and just see the opportunity of protecting people, is just, it really is such a fulfilling space to be in. And I can't thank you guys enough for your partnerships. What is, I want to pivot off of that one sort of final question, and that is sustainability. And when I say sustainability, there's a lot of different ways I can go with that. But what I'm thinking is, how does Gore, as this organization that's disruptive, not afraid to fail, how do you embody that into the generation behind you? To say, like, how do you recruit that into there? Like, how do you go find them? How do you build that culture? And yeah, that's probably the last thing I would want to ask.
Sure. So I think it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier, is that many of these, Gore has been doing sustainable things, for quite a long time. A lot of people wouldn't know that, some or many of our factories, are powered, by, alternative energy, green energy, right? When you look at it, at, sort of a raw material level, we'll select, raw materials that, are the best practice for their field, like that. Those were the smartest ways, in order to bring those materials to society. For example, like, if you blend with cotton fiber, right? Is that cotton, grown and collected, in a way that, is socially, the right way to do it, right? And so these are all layers, that we go through, that, add to this, broader picture of sustainability. But even when you look at it from just our core membranes, making alternative polymer didn't happen overnight. For us, making things out of alternative polymer, which now we've launched into our consumer business successfully, that took, thinking about that proposition, way in advance, and enabling it at now the commercial scale that Gore can facilitate and bring it to market. And so we're taking those platforms, and then we're now starting to bring those platforms into our technical space. So how do we enable our firefighters to do, those, harsh, jobs? How do we create solutions for the future warfighter, or our, high voltage electrical technicians? All of those things that we're trying to do, are still they're like a technical sub journey that are complex. Because a lot of times people don't know, how is it that we make the magic work, inside of, the Pyrex sandwich, if you will. But for me, it's really the broader essence of GORE is thinking about that, whole proposition in the most sustainable way, not just, product alone, but, how we do that collectively.
That's cool. I think, how do you field test? I mean, obviously military stuff, right? I get that.
Yeah.
Do you ever get like background R&D on like, these guys were cold in the field a lot and they were wearing this GORE-TEX product? Does that ever happen?
Oh, it does. We have
like the government of whatever country says, "Hey, FYI, we bought a bunch of this stuff."
Well, I mean, so hopefully we don't end up in that outcome. However, we do think about it, so we have test facilities where they mimic, a lot of the, environments, that our workers will go out into. We want you to come and visit those factories and see those processes that we go through. So we do a lot of advanced human science evaluations on, PPE. Or uniforms, in order to really understand, again, going back to sort of the day in the life, the worst day in the life of any of those workers.
Yeah, work from the absolute worst case scenario.
Yeah, so if we're going to go from horrific heat, to extreme cold, how are we going to allow that human to function, in any job, and yet do it in a safe and practical way?
No, I mean, I think it's incredible. That's what I think is so cool about the brand as a whole. And what I also think too is really important to know is the culture that's associated with the brand as well. I mean, not saying nobody can, or not a lot of people do, but the amount of technology and impact that GORE-TEX makes as a brand into a marketplace, but then also it's the background intentionality around the relationship building and stuff, and the long-term value propositions that you guys have done too, that I've gotten a chance to experience with you and with Paul and Jeff, and say, I actually like these guys. This is fun. Like this is, and we're all kind of in the same group together where we like a lot of the same things. We have a lot of commonalities, and I think it's really fun to be able just to sit in the room and kind of BS with each other and come up with these crazy ideas and stuff, and then have a pathway with somebody that can actually go maybe give this information back and run it up and create a funnel process for it, and be able to say we could actually create potentially something that even breaks this mold that we just disrupted the entire industry with, aka Pyret or something. Exactly. And I think that's what makes it really fun. That's what makes it exciting. And for people like me who are constantly thinking about the next hill to take, not the one that we're on today, it just gets me so excited, and it gets me so amped up to be like, oh, dude, what does this look like in 5 years? What does this look like in 10 years?
Exactly. And we don't know sometimes.
No,
right?
We don't know.
Yeah.
And to feel like as a company, we're positioned in a place where we are able to provide that feedback. It's cooler than cool. It's as cool as it gets, in my opinion. So yeah.
Equally for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's all I've got, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming in. Obviously, I think learning more about you, Jim, was awesome. I think also really getting that full scope of GORE. And I know we only scratched the surface of it too. We didn't even really get that deep.
Absolutely.
But it's been a wonderful partnership. It's been exciting. You guys continue to just impress me on every single front. And I think that there's a long, long future that ultimately the technicians, the workers, all those people get to benefit from. So thank you for pursuing us as much as you did.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here. We love having you guys as our partner, and I'm looking forward to a long journey.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.